Hello everyone. In this particular video lecture, we would figure out that what will be the expression of torque which is developed in a DC machine. So basically, we are interested in calculating a mathematical expression which will allow us to estimate the electromagnetic torque which is developed in a DC machine. So in order to compute the expression of electromagnetic torque, we will take this approach where we will first find out the force which is experienced by one single conductor, and then we will try to determine that whether the direction of force on each of the armature conductors, are they in the same direction or they are differing. So once we are able to make out that the direction of the force acting on all the armature conductors are in the same direction, so then we can conclude that the force acting on the armature conductors individually can be added up, because the direction of force acting on each of the armature conductors will be found out to be in the same direction, which we will shortly try to demonstrate in this video lecture, that the direction of force experienced by the armature conductors is indeed acting in the same direction. So as a result, we can add them up. The force acting on each of the armature conductors will be summed up, or they will be added up, and then we will multiply it by the radius of the armature core. This is the armature core, that is the rotating part of the DC machine. So the radius of the armature core, that is d by 2, where d is the diameter of the armature core, will be multiplied by the total force, or the summation of forces acting on all the armature conductors. So we will arrive at the expression of electromagnetic torque. But before we start calculating that, let us make ourselves familiar with this diagram, so that it will help us even more better to find out what is happening inside a DC machine when it is working as a motor. So as we are trying to find the electromagnetic torque expression for a DC machine, so let us we are assuming here motoring action. Actually, the thing is that the expression of electromagnetic torque which will be derived in this particular example, where we are considering motoring action, the same expression will be also applicable when the machine is acting as a generator. But there is only one difference, that in case of generating action, the electromagnetic torque which is developed is actually opposing the prime mover torque. This is in accordance with Lenz's law or Lenz's law. So as per Lenz's law, what we say, that electromagnetic torque is also developed when the DC machine is working as a generator, but that electromagnetic torque which is developed during generating mode is actually opposing the prime mover torque. However, the mathematical expression which is going to be derived for a DC machine when it is working as a motor, the same expression, mathematical expression of torque, will be also applicable when it is working as a generator. Now, first of all, in this particular diagram, what I am saying is that I have indicated the cross-sectional view of a two-pole DC machine, and the cross-section is being taken along. That means we are taking the cross-sectional view of a two-pole DC machine along a plane which is normal or perpendicular to the shaft of the DC machine. That means you have to imagine that the DC machine is being cut by a imaginary plane, and the imaginary plane is being perpendicular or normal to the shaft. So this will be the cross-sectional view. Now the number of poles here are taken to be 2, one north and south. So since we are taking the number of poles to be 2, then we are having the advantage that we don't have to bother, or we don't have to worry regarding the electrical degree and mechanical degree, because we are taking the number of poles to be 2. So electrical and mechanical degree are same, because you know that theta electrical is given by P by 2 times theta mechanical. So if the number of poles is 2, then they are equal. Both are same, mechanical degree and electrical degree. Now, you see here, this cross and dot, and here this cross and dot will make you to understand that this pole will be the north pole and this pole will be the south pole, because if you apply that right hand rule where we need to ensure that the right hand four fingers should be moved along the direction of current carried by the field coils. So if you do that, the thumb will give you the direction of magnetic lines of flux. So here cross means what? Current is entering into the board. So these four fingers of the right hand will enter into the board, and from the back side of the board these four fingers will come out, because here we have dot means what? Current should leave the board. That means this current is indicated as this current, or rather I should say this conductor are indicated dot. So this conductor are indicated dot means this conductor are carrying current which is in the direction out of the board. So that's why what we do, cross means current is entering into the board. So these four fingers of the right hand will enter into the board, because cross means current is entering into the board, and from behind it will come out, because dot means it is leaving the board. So if you do like this, you see thumb is pointing in this direction. So the nail of the thumb is in this direction. Now please remember, when we are applying this rule, please use only right hand. Even if you are a left-handed person, you might be using the left hand, but that will give you wrong result. So you have to use your right hand only. So by this right hand rule, we see that lines of flux is actually going to leave this pole face. So since the lines of flux are going to leave this pole face, this will be north pole, because you know that from the north pole face what happens, lines of flux emanate or they leave the north pole face. So this will be north pole. Same way you apply that right hand rule, cross means it is entering, dot means leaving. You see thumb is pointing towards this pole face. That means what? For this pole face, thumb is pointing towards this pole face. If you use that right hand rule, again you use cross means entering into the board, dot means it is leaving the board. So my four fingers, the right hand four fingers are entering inside the board and it is coming out of the board from behind. So thumb is pointing towards this pole face. That means for this pole face you will find that magnetic lines of flux are entering. So since magnetic lines of flux are entering this pole face, this will be our south pole. Now this being a motoring action, we have assumed actually motoring action. What we have assumed? We have assumed motoring action. So for motoring action, you have to give electrical energy as input, and that electrical energy which is given as input to the DC motor, it will be converted into mechanical energy. So we actually provide this electrical energy input to the DC motor in the form of some voltage source. So we have given a voltage source across the field coils, so which is resulting in the current flow through the field coils, which is indicated here by cross and dot for this field coil. This field coil is also having this cross and dot polarity. Again, we have to also give a voltage supply to the armature terminals. That means these brush terminals, you can name it if you wish. In most of the cases you might see that these terminals are named as A and A dash. Let's say A dash or A double A. So these are the two terminals, A and A dash. So these two terminals A and A dash, they will be also connected to a DC source or voltage source. So that DC source can be the same DC source to which these field coils are connected. So in that case you are having the option that you can connect them in series or you can connect them in shunt. So accordingly the machine will be known as shunt motor or series motor. However, if you use two different voltage supply, one voltage supply will be dedicated for energizing the field coils only, and another voltage supply will be dedicated for energizing the armature coils only. So in that case we will call that DC motor to be separately excited DC motor, because you need a separate DC source for energizing the field coils and armature. So in that case that particular DC motor will be termed as separately excited DC motor. Anyway, we are assuming that the voltage which is applied across the armature terminals are of such polarity that these conductors of the armature named as 1 dash, 2 dash, 3 dash, 4 dash, 5 dash, 6 dash, they will carry cross current, and the conductors under the influence of north pole, the armature conductors under the influence of north pole, that is conductor 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, they will carry dot current. So we are assuming that the voltage which is applied to the armature terminals A and A dash, voltage which is applied to the armature terminals A and A dash is of such nature or polarity that it will allow the cross current through these armature conductors which are under the influence of south pole, and dot current under these armature conductors which are under the influence of north pole. Now you see, this is a particular assumption. You are equally free to choose the reverse. That means what? You may choose that the conductors under north pole are carrying cross current, and conductors under south pole, they are carrying dot current. You can equally choose this to be your also the thing. However, in that case, the direction of electromagnetic torque will be opposite to the direction of electromagnetic torque for this particular case. So it just depends on our assumption that you are free to choose these conductors to be carrying cross current and this conductor to be carrying dot current. The reverse can be also chosen. Anyway, what has been done here, you see at the bottom, I have shown a variation of magnetic flux density for the field coil currents. This blue color line which is indicated as B is nothing but this blue color line which is indicated as B is nothing but the magnetic flux density corresponding to field winding current or field coil current. Okay. Now before I start upon, let me tell you that I have made another assumption which I should write here. Let me write it here. This to be south. So what do you see here? That you will find that south pole flux under the south pole, that is taken as positive, and flux under the north pole is taken as negative. Now why it is like that? Actually we have taken a convention where we will label, or we will try to put the value of the flux to be positive or negative on the basis of whether the lines of flux are entering the stator core or it is leaving the stator core. Let me put once more. What I want to say is that if lines of flux are entering the stator core, so they will be termed as positive. So obviously if the lines of flux are leaving the stator core, they will be termed as negative. Now again I am saying everybody is free to choose the reverse convention also. There is no binding. That means you can also choose a reverse convention where you may assign the flux which is leaving the stator core to be positive, and flux which is leaving the stator core to be positive, and flux which is entering the stator core to be negative. That can be also taken as a convention. But in this example, in this particular case, I have taken a convention where magnetic lines of flux, if they are found to enter the stator core, it will be termed as positive, and if the magnetic lines of flux are leaving, they are coming out, leaving the stator core, it will be termed as negative. Now you see, this is my stator, because this north and south pole, they will be attached to the yoke portion. Now okay, I believe you have understood by this point that I have indicated only the armature core. This is the armature core, this circular structure is the armature core, and these are your north and south pole field poles. But if you notice, I have not indicated the yoke portion. That yoke portion which will be completing like this, that yoke portion has not been indicated due to your shortage of space, but there will be a yoke portion completing the poles. Okay. Now what you can see is that whatever lines of flux they are leaving the stator core, they are actually also entering the rotor core. That means if you have a lines of flux which is leaving the stator core like this one, so these lines of flux are leaving the stator core, but they are also entering the rotor core. On the other hand, over here, the lines of flux which are leaving the rotor core, they are also entering the stator core. So when we are defining that positive and negative, it is better to define in this way. In what way I am saying? We will define that if lines of flux are leaving the rotor core or entering the stator core, they will be termed as positive. So obviously the lines of flux which are leaving the stator core and entering the rotor core will be termed as negative. So what we do, we define this positive and negative taking both into consideration. That means the stator core and rotor core. That means we will say that whatever lines of flux they are leaving the rotor core, they will actually enter the stator core. So that means you see here the lines of flux are leaving the rotor core and these are also entering the stator core as well. So we say that lines of flux leaving the rotor core or entering the stator core, they will be termed as positive. So the reverse will be there for this north pole. Here lines of flux which will be leaving the stator core or entering the rotor core will be termed as negative. Now again I am saying you can also choose the reverse convention. Now according to that, you see the flux under the south pole will be termed as positive. So this is positive. Likewise, flux under north pole will be termed as negative. So this is your negative. So under north pole flux is negative because the lines of flux are leaving the stator core, and under south pole lines of flux are positive because they are entering the stator core. So this is in accordance with our assumption. Now, if you really getting worried that how at all we are able to say that the magnetic flux density will be varying like this in a DC machine. Actually, you do one thing, you can always do one thing is that you choose different number of paths. So it is better you just take up this developed view. This was the cross-sectional view of a 2-pole DC machine, and this is the developed view of a 2-pole DC machine. So in this developed view, if you choose a path along this line, you will see that it is enclosing some conductors. So these conductors are what? They are carrying dot current. So let us define that conductors carrying dot current will be termed as positive. So you allow me to use some different color. So let us choose this one path. So I am choosing this path, complete path, okay, closed path. So in this closed path, what do you find? That it is enclosing some current. So MMF will be acting along this path. Now, according to Ampere's circuital law, MMF acting along this closed path, which is shown by this red line, MMF acting along this closed path, which is shown by this red line, is equal to the current enclosed by this closed path. So if you say that this is your having NF number of turns, in general, if the coil is having enough number of turns, then what will happen? It will enclose a current of NF into IF, where IF is the field current. Now if you choose another path like this, you see again that the net current enclosed in this second path also is again the same thing. It's not changing. The current enclosed is again NF into IF. So what do you see? That as long as you are taking any number of path, but that number of path should fall along this pole face. This is south pole and this is the pole face. So if this path is falling along the south pole face, the current enclosed will be always equal. You can see it here that in the first path, that means this one, you see the number of conductors enclosed is NF and current carried by each conductor is IF. So it is NF into IF. NF is the number of field winding coil and IF is the field current. So NF IF. In the second case also it is NF IF. So as long as you are moving between this pole face, the current enclosed will be always same. So MMF acting is not changing. So that means what? Over the pole face MMF acting is constant. Now what do you see? That if you neglect this slot opening, this portion, you may zoom in, this portion is known as slot opening. So what is happening at the slot opening? The air gap is found to be slightly more compared to the teeth. This is the teeth portion. So if you move along the teeth portion, you will encounter a shorter air gap. But if you move along the slot portion, you will encounter a larger air gap. So what we say that along the slot portion air gap is slightly more, and along the teeth portion air gap is slightly less. So we just here let us ignore for simplicity that the effect of slot opening is negligible. So if you neglect the effect of slot opening, what do you find? That if you are moving under the pole face, the air gap is constant. That means reluctance is constant. So if you move along the pole face, air gap is constant, so reluctance is constant. But MMF was also constant under the pole face, because if you choose any number of closed path, as well, as long as that closed path is lying in the pole faces, you can take this particular example. The number of conductors enclosed is this one. In the second case also, the number of conductor enclosed is NF only. So if you choose any path, but that path should be between the pole faces only, in that case the current enclosed is same, so MMF acting is same. Also the air gap is uniform, or the air gap is constant under the pole face. So what is happening? Reluctance is also constant. So we conclude that flux density or flux, you can say flux, so flux will be constant under the pole faces. But if flux is constant, then flux density B will be also constant, because flux density is computed by dividing what? By dividing flux. Flux with whom? We divide flux by area. So we get B. So that's why you see under the pole faces the variation of B is not there. It is more or less constant. You can see here under the pole faces the value of flux density is more or less constant under the pole faces. So this portion is lying under the pole face. What about this portion and this portion? You see here, please look here. What do you see? That once you come out of the pole face, once you are coming out of the pole face, you are coming into the interpolar region or interpolar axis. So along the interpolar axis you can see this much is the air gap length. So you see there is a huge increase in air gap length. Under the pole face, that means this one, only air gap is this much. Under the pole face, air gap is only this much, it is very small. But under the interpolar axis, you see air gap is such a long length. So that's why along the interpolar axis air gap length increases. So reluctance obviously increases, because if the air gap length increases, then reluctance also increases. So reluctance increases means what? For the same MMF, your flux will reduce, and if flux reduces, then flux density will also reduce. So that's why you see here, after maintaining a constant value of magnetic flux density B, the value of B is sharply falling. The value of B is sharply falling because this part of the portion is lying along the interpolar region or interpolar axis, and this portion is under the pole face. Okay, this portion is under the pole face. So that's why there is a fall in the magnetic flux density, because this portion is lying under the interpolar region. This portion is also lying under the interpolar region. Now, this was about the nature of variation of magnetic flux density B. Now, let us first recapitulate what is the basic working principle of a DC motor. The basic working principle of a DC motor is that if you place a current carrying conductor in a magnetic field which has been created by some other sources, in that case the current carrying conductor will experience a force. So what we are talking about? We are talking about a conductor. What kind of conductor? That conductor should be carrying current, and that conductor which is carrying current, or rather that current carrying conductor should be placed in some magnetic field, but that magnetic field has to be created by some other sources. So in that case what will happen? That particular conductor will experience a force because it has been placed in a magnetic field, and as well as it is carrying some current. So here also you see, if you focus on the armature conductors, actually on the armature core you can find there are 12 number of conductors, 1 2 3 4 5 6, then 1 dash 2 dash 3 dash 4 dash. Actually instead of thinking that it is having 12 number of armature conductors, you can equally think that it is having 6 number of armature coils. What are the 6 number of armature coils? One armature coil is 1 1 dash, another armature coil is 2 2 dash, another armature coil is 3 dash, like that, 6 armature coils. Anyway, one more thing I should tell is that here I have indicated single layer winding, but in actual practice you will find that the armature core of a DC machine is having a armature winding which is of double layer type. That means double layer winding is mostly used in most of the armature core of DC machine. So double layer winding is actually the norm, single layer winding is hardly used. But here for convenience of drawing, I have indicated a single layer winding. Nevertheless, you should remember that whatever conclusion we make out or whatever conclusion we draw out here on the basis of single layer armature winding, the same thing will be also applicable if the armature is having double layer winding. So double layer winding or single layer winding, whatever conclusion you make out here for single layer armature winding, the same conclusion can be applied for double layer armature winding also. Now if you look here in the armature core, there are 12 conductors. So these 12 conductors are carrying current. These 6 conductors are carrying dot current. That means what? Current is leaving the board. And these 6 conductors are carrying cross current. That means current is entering into the board. Now what can be done? Let us try to find out the force experienced by the conductors under the north pole, and also find the force experienced by the conductor under south pole. Now for finding the force experienced by the conductor, I mean to say for finding the force experienced by the armature conductors, we have to apply Fleming's left hand rule. That means for generating action we used to apply Fleming's right hand rule, but for motoring action we have to apply Fleming's left hand rule. So Fleming's left hand rule, how we are going to apply? This index finger of the left hand will be directed along the magnetic lines of flux. So you see how are the field flux directed? Field flux will leave the north pole. Field flux will leave the north pole and it will enter the south pole. So the field flux is in this direction and the left hand index finger is in this direction. These conductors are carrying dot current. That means current is leaving the board. So middle finger is coming out of the board. The thumb of the left hand will give you the force. Rather, the thumb will give you the direction of force experienced by this armature conductor. So where is the thumb pointing? Thumb is pointing upwards. So if I apply a tangential force upward for this armature core, it will start rotating in clockwise direction. Because if you think this circle is the armature core, actually this is a cross-sectional view. So actually it is not a circle. It is actually a cylinder. So if there is a cylinder like this, and if I apply a tangential force upwards to this cylinder, then it will start rotating in clockwise direction. Now what remains to be seen is that the force acting on the armature conductors under north pole is directed in which direction? Upwards. And it is going to rotate the armature core in clockwise direction, because this is the direction of the force, or this is the direction of the tangential force. So it will rotate in clockwise direction. Now again apply Fleming's left hand rule for conductors under south pole. So for south pole, what will happen? Lines of flux are entering the south pole phase. Lines of flux are entering the south pole phase. So the index finger of the left hand should point towards the south pole phase. What about the middle finger? Middle finger should point into the board. Why? Because the conductors under south pole, the armature conductors under south pole are carrying cross current. So middle finger should enter into the board. So where is the thumb pointing? Downwards. So the direction of force for the armature conductors under the influence of south pole is downwards. So if I apply a tangential force downwards, so this cylinder will again rotate in clockwise direction only. So that means on the armature conductors under the influence of north pole, the tangential force is acting upwards, and on the armature conductors under the south pole, the tangential force is acting downwards. So this force is acting tangentially up and this force is acting tangentially down. So if you apply this kind of tangential force, you can follow my hand. Left hand is pointing upwards because the armature conductor and the north pole are having force upwards, and this right hand is pointing downwards because the armature conductors and the south pole, armature conductors under south pole are pointing downwards, so it will rotate in clockwise direction. Another approach you can well use is that instead of applying this Fleming's left hand rule, you simply plot the armature magnetic lines of flux. That means what? This green line which you can see, these green lines are nothing but they are phi A. What is phi A? Phi A is your armature flux. So these green lines are nothing but these green lines are phi A, that is armature flux. So you can equally determine that what is the plot of the armature flux. What is the plot of the armature flux phi A? So by that right hand grip rule, cross means current is entering, so I am grabbing the conductor with my right hand. Cross means current is entering the board, so thumb is into the board. I will curl these four fingers of the right hand, so I will get the magnetic lines of flux for the conductors. So going by this plot of armature flux, you can say that this is which pole? This will be your north pole and this will be your south pole. Now how I can be so sure? Why I am calling like that? What is the reason? The reason is very simple. For magnetic lines of flux, sorry, I did a mistake. This should be your north pole. This should be your north pole, and this will be your south pole. Now it's okay. This will be south pole. Why it will be south pole? Because we should remember that inside a magnet, the direction of magnetic lines of flux are from south to north. So inside the magnet, magnetic lines of flux are directed from south to north. So this armature core will be the magnet, because if armature windings are carrying current, so armature core will get magnetized. So the armature core will become my magnet. So inside the magnet, the direction of lines of flux are from south pole to north pole, and outside from north to south. Inside the magnet, lines of flux are from south to north, and outside north to south. So this is the direction. So now you see these north and south pole are developed on the field poles, and these north and south pole are developed on the armature core due to the current carried by armature conductors. So in either of the cases you will find that if this is north pole and if this is south pole, what will happen? This south will be repelled by this south, and at the same time this south will be attracted by this north. So where is the torque developed? In the clockwise direction. So you see this is in perfect agreement with your Fleming's left hand rule. That means whatever direction of torque we have determined by applying Fleming's left hand rule, the same torque direction is also coming if you simply consider that electromagnetic torque is nothing but a attraction between north and south pole developed on the stator surface and north and south pole developed on the rotor surface. So this is what we mean, that electromagnetic torque is nothing but the attraction between north and south pole developed on the stator core and north and south pole developed on the rotor core. This is the rotor core. So electromagnetic torque is the attraction and repulsion between the north and south pole developed on the stator core and developed on the rotor core, like this one. Now you see here, this plot of magnetic flux density on the south and north pole are respectively what? Positive and negative. That means under north pole it is negative and under south pole it is positive. This was in accordance to our convention which we have assumed. Now what about the direction of force? The direction of force are indicated by this red color. So you find that direction of force is positive for both under south pole as well as north pole. So this you apply. Again Fleming's left hand rule, it is very easy. You can simply find it out. What you have to do is that, you see, these are the armature conductors. So these armature conductors, for south pole what will happen? For south pole phase, magnetic lines of flux will enter the pole phase. So the left hand index finger should be pointing towards the south pole phase, and the armature conductors are carrying cross current. So where is the force acting? In this direction, that is from left to right. Are you able to get this? Magnetic lines of flux will enter the south pole phase. Magnetic lines of flux will enter the south pole phase. So index finger of the left hand should point towards south pole phase, because flux are entering the south pole phase, and the armature conductors are carrying cross current. Means what? Middle finger should be pointing into the board. So where is the thumb pointing? From left to right. Now you again apply Fleming's left hand rule for armature conductors under north pole. So for armature conductors under north pole, what do you see? For north pole, magnetic lines of flux should leave the pole phase, So index finger should be away from the pole face. What about the conductors? The armature conductors are carrying dot current. So middle finger of the left hand will be out of the board. So where is the thumb pointing? The thumb is pointing again from left to right. So on both the occasion we have seen that the thumb is pointing from left to right. That means what? The direction of force experienced by the conductors under south pole and the direction of force experienced by the armature conductors under north pole, they are directed in the same direction. In this particular case it happens from left to right. If you want, let me just once more do it for you. For south pole what will happen? Lines of flux will enter the pole face. Cross means what? Current will enter the board. So middle finger, obviously we have to use our left hand because we are dealing with motoring action. So middle finger left hand will point into the board because armature conductors are cross current. Index finger will point towards the south pole. So where is the thumb pointing? From left to right. Now come over to north pole. For north pole what happens? Lines of flux are leaving. So index finger is leaving the pole face. What about the middle finger? Dot means current is leaving the board. So middle finger is out of the board. So where is the thumb pointing? From left to right again. So you see in both the cases you find that the direction of force for armature conductors under south pole and under north pole, they are in the same direction. That is from left to right in this particular case. So that's why the force is positive for both under north pole and as well as south pole. So you see the direction of force is shown to be positive for both north pole as well as for both south pole. Now regarding the wave shape, how we can be so much sure that the wave shape will be like this only? You see, force experienced by a conductor which is carrying current I and which is having length L is given by BIL. So F equals to BIL. F equals to, let me write it, F average. If we write F average is nothing but B average, BIL. So what is B average? Average value of magnetic flux density in the air gap. What is I? Current carried by each conductor. What is L? Length of the conductor. So average force acting on each conductor is nothing but BIL. L is the length of the conductor. This length of the conductor will be equal to the active length of the conductor. So active length means which is under the influence of the north pole face or south pole face. That means the length of the conductor equals to the length of the armature core. This is my armature core. Armature core is a laminated cylindrical structure. So whatever is the height of this cylindrical structure or whatever is the length of this cylindrical structure, that will be termed as armature core length. So that is your L. So what is L? L is the armature core length. Armature is a laminated cylindrical structure. That cylindrical structure will have its length or height. That is your armature core length L. What is I? Current carried by each armature conductor, and B average is the average value of magnetic flux density in the air gap. So force acting on each conductor is what? B average into IL. Now I and L are constant because length of the armature core is constant. Once it is manufactured, it cannot change. What is I? I is the current carried by each conductor. Now current carried by each conductor is nothing but it is actually IA, that is armature current, divided by A. So what is small a? Small a is the number of parallel path in the armature circuit, and IA is the current which is entering or leaving the brush. So say if IA is your armature current which is entering the brush, if IA is the armature current which is entering the brush, so that armature current will see that there are a number of parallel path. So it will get divided equally among those a number of parallel path. So in each parallel path, current will be IA by A because the total current entering or leaving the brush is IA. Once the current is entering the brush, that means the current entering the brush is IA. It is seeing what? A number of parallel paths. So this A number of parallel path will have the armature current IA getting equally divided among them. That means what? That means each parallel path will carry a current given by IA by A. So IA means what? Armature current. A means what? Number of parallel paths in the armature circuit. So if armature current is not changing, then this IA by A is what? Is the current which will be carried by each of the conductors, because whatever conductor you are having, that conductors will be connected in series in each parallel path. Let us take one particular example. Let's say we have got 12 number of conductors and we have got 4 number of parallel path. So total number of armature conductors is 12 and we have 4 parallel path. So in each parallel path the number of conductors will be what? It will be 3, because total armature conductors is 12 and number of parallel path is 4. So 12 by 4 is what? 3. So these 3 conductors which will be there in each of the parallel path, they will be connected in series. So that means they will carry the same current. So in general you can say that Z is the total number of armature conductors. Z means what? Here 12, and A is the number of parallel path in the armature circuit. That means A means what here? 4. So what is the total number of conductors which are connected in series? Z by A, that is 12 by 4, that means 3. So that's what I am saying, that if you have Z number of armature conductors and A number of parallel path in the armature circuit, then you will have Z by A number of conductors in series in each of the parallel path. So that means what? The Z by A number of conductors are connected in series in each of the parallel path. But what is the current carried by each of the parallel path? Ia by A. That's what I am saying, that the current carried by any conductor in the armature will be given by Ia by A. So that multiplied by B average we get the force. Now if Ia by A and L they are constant, so only thing which can vary is B average. So obviously force will be a replica of B average. F average or force is what? B average into Ia by A into L. If we say that Ia by A, that is current carried by each conductor, and length of the armature core, that is L, they are constant, then obviously F will follow B average. So wherever B will be parallel, F will be parallel. Wherever B will start falling, F will also start falling. Wherever B average will have its zero value, there also the F will be having its zero value. So that's why this force waveform is a replica of B waveform, except one difference, that it is positive both under south pole as well as it is positive under north pole. Which one? The force waveform. Now what about torque? Torque can be computed by multiplying the F average by R. What is R? R is the radius of the armature core. What is R? R is the radius of the armature core. So that will be the expression of torque. Now R means what? Radius of the armature core. So armature core radius is a constant. So that means what? Torque expression will also follow the force expression, because torque expression Te will be nothing but it will be F average into R. So this F average into R. So R is the radius of the armature core, which is a constant. So again torque will follow your F average. Now please remember, or please notice here, I am here writing, let me write here small te, that will be better, otherwise it will create a confusion, because small te means what? Torque due to one conductor. These are due to only one conductor. That has to be kept in mind, please, that these expressions which are written here, B average I by into L, this is the force acting on one conductor only. Here Te is nothing but the torque acting on one conductor only. So we have to actually find out what is the net force acting, or what is the net torque acting. Okay, till now whatever expression is written over here, F average or Te, these are for only one conductor. That means force on one conductor, torque due to one conductor. But how many conductors we are having actually? We are having Z number of conductors. So we have to multiply by Z. Now what is the logic? Why we are multiplying? Why we are multiplying force experienced by one conductor into total number of conductors so as to get the total force? What we are doing? For finding the total force experienced by all the Z number of armature conductors, we are multiplying Z into force experienced by one conductor. So the logic behind is that the direction of force experienced by all the armature conductors are in the same direction. So that's why they should get added up. So that's why what we are doing, we are multiplying the force experienced by one armature conductor times the total number of armature conductors. The logic is that the direction of force experienced by the armature conductors, whether they are under south pole or they are under north pole, happens to be in the same direction. They get added up, they are summed up. You can quickly see cross means entering the board, south pole it will point towards the pole face, so thumb is in the direction left to right. For north pole, flux will leave, dot means current is leaving the board, so you see again thumb is in the direction left to right. So you see for all the armature conductors, force are acting in the same direction. In this particular case it is from left to right. So that's why what we do, we just find the expression of force experienced by one conductor, one armature conductor, and then we multiply by the number of armature conductors in order to find the force experienced by the armature core. And once you know the force experienced by the armature core, we can multiply that by the radius of the armature core in order to find the torque. So we will do that calculation. Okay, now just I need to tell you one thing which I have not said right now, is that this x-axis is nothing but the space angle theta. We are plotting the value of theta along the x-axis. This x-axis is also known as abscissa. This x-axis is also known as abscissa. So we are plotting theta, that is the space angle along the x-axis. So this space angle theta is defined as what? It is defined as a angular distance of any point from the reference axis. You can just take very clearly one point. Let's say we are taking up this point in the air gap. So what we do, we measure the angular distance of this point from the reference axis. This line which is passing through the geometric neutral axis or the interpolar axis, this red line which is passing through the geometric neutral axis or the interpolar axis is our reference axis. So at this point theta is 0. So at this point theta will be 90, because if you measure the angular distance of this point, from this axis, it is 90 degree. This point will be 180 degree if you measure it from here. This point will be 270, because you move from here to here, 90, another 90, another 90, isn't it? So we measure the space angle theta with respect to some reference axis. So that reference axis in this particular example is chosen along the interpolar axis. You may also choose it along the polar axis. Anyway, the space angle theta is a convenient way of locating or pinpointing any point in the air gap. You can locate any point in the air gap. You can locate any point in the air gap with the value of angle theta by measuring how far this point is from the reference axis. So we can measure the point, or rather we can locate the point, we can locate any point in the air gap by measuring the value of angle theta, which is your space angle. Okay, now let me derive it, the expression which will be there. Just give me a moment. What we have seen is that the direction of force acting on the armature conductors is in the same direction for all the armature conductors. But what was the direction? What was the expression of force for one conductor? For one conductor, expression of force was B average into I into L. What is I? Current carried by each conductor. But we see that current carried by each conductor is nothing but the current flowing in each parallel path. Current carried by each conductor is nothing but it is the current flowing in each parallel path, which is nothing but Ia by A into L. Now what is B average? B average is the average value of magnetic flux density in the air gap. It is given by P phi divided by pi dl. So what is P? P is the number of poles, and what is phi? Phi is flux per pole. What is D? D is the diameter of the armature core, and L is the core length. So if you take the armature core as a cylinder, so this thing of the armature core is your D, and this thing is your armature core length L. Okay, you must have seen in the earlier video lectures, but again I am showing it in short. So this is the armature core cylinder. So this diameter of the armature core is D, and this is the length of the armature core. So now what is the total flux in the air gap? The total flux in the air gap is P phi. Why? Flux per pole is phi and total number of poles in is P. So flux per pole, that is phi, multiplied by number of poles, that is P, will give you the total flux in the air gap. So total flux in the air gap is P phi, P being the number of poles and phi is the flux per pole. So this is my armature core cylinder. So lines of flux which is leaving the north pole phase will enter this armature core surface, and lines of flux which are going to enter the south pole will leave from this armature core surface. So you see how much area is available for the magnetic lines of flux to enter and leave. This curved surface area, this curved surface area of the armature core, this curved surface area of the armature core is available for the lines of flux to enter and leave. If this is the armature core, lines of flux will leave the north pole and it will enter this armature core, and from here it will leave and it will enter the south pole. So what is this curved surface area? This is your diameter d, which is your armature core diameter. So this thing is your pi d, because it's a circle and the diameter is d. So what is the perimeter? Perimeter is pi d. And what is this length? This length is the L. This length is the armature core length L. So what is this curved surface area? Pi d into L. So this pi d into L is the total surface area and P phi is the total flux. So total flux in the air gap is P phi and pi dl is the surface area of the armature core through which lines of flux can leave and enter. So average value of flux density is P phi by pi dl. And this was explained earlier that I is the current carried by each conductor and it is given by Ia by A. So what is F average? Force experienced by one conductor. Now what is the force experienced by the total number of armature conductors? That is F, given by Z multiplied by small FAB, because you have seen that the direction of force acting on all the armature conductors was coming out to be same by applying Fleming's left hand rule. Okay, so we multiply by Z in order to get the total force acting on the armature due to current carried by the armature conductors. Now what is the torque? Torque will be given by what? Force multiplied by R. What is R? Radius of the armature core. But instead of writing radius, we can also write d by 2, that is the diameter by 2. So now for F you write what? For F you are writing Z into F average. This is d by 2. Now you put up the value of small f average. What is it? Let me write it. So it is your nothing but Z multiplied by f average is what? B average into Ia by A into L into d by 2. So we are just putting up the value of f average. That means small f average, B average, Ia by A into L, and this was the f. For f we are writing Z into f average, and for radius R we have written d by 2. Now what can you write further? For B average what can you write? For B average you can write P phi by pi d L, and here you have Ia by A, this is L in d by 2. So now if you simplify what expression of torque you are having, if you simplify what expression of torque you will have, you can simplify and find that the expression of torque Te is coming as Zp divided by 2 pi, this is A, into phi into Ia. Do you agree with this? It's because you see, let me use some another color. This L and this L will cancel. This D and this D will cancel. So what is remaining? Zp divided by 2 pi, then A, then phi Ia. So this is your expression for torque. So what I was saying that if you just look at this expression, you will find that L and L getting cancelled, this D and D will get cancelled. So ultimately you have what in the denominator? In the denominator you will have 2 pi A 2 pi a, and then and in the numerator we will have ZP, then this phi and Ia. So this is the expression for torque, ZP by 2 pi a phi into Ia. So this thing is sometimes denoted by the symbol K. So with that we say actually torque is what? K phi Ia. Now this was one approach for explaining the derivation of torque experienced by the armature core in case of DC motor. But this expression can be also used for finding out the torque which is developed in a DC generator. Actually, the torque developed in a DC generator is actually opposing the prime mover torque. That's it. So the torque is also developed, I mean to say electromagnetic torque is also developed in generating action, but that electromagnetic torque developed in generating action is opposing the prime mover torque. That is the only function. It is not helping in motion. Whereas in motoring action, the rotation or the motion is happening due to this electromagnetic torque which is developed. Now what about the utility of this diagram? Actually this is another way of explaining that how torque is developed. You see, I have drawn here 3 diagrams. This is diagram number 1, this is diagram number 2, and this is diagram number 3. So if you look carefully, you will find that if you superpose the lines of flux for the bottom 2 diagrams, that means this one and this one, you will get the diagram which is drawn at the top portion. So what I am asking is very simple, is that you first plot the magnetic lines of flux due to field current only. Then you plot the magnetic lines of flux due to armature current only. So once you have plotted the magnetic lines of flux due to armature current only, assuming at that time field current is 0, and you have plotted the magnetic lines of flux due to field current only, assuming at that time armature current is 0, what we do is we superpose those lines of flux in order to get the actual picture which will be there during loaded condition of the DC machine. What is happening, you see, in this particular diagram, field current is there. Okay, this field current, this is a field current Ia. Field current is not equal to 0. Field current is not equal to 0. Field current is there, but armature current is 0. So we have plotted the lines of flux. So for what should happen for south pole? For south pole, lines of flux should enter the pole face. So you let us zoom it here at this point. Let us zoom it here at this point. What do you see? That for the south pole face, magnetic lines of flux are entering the south pole face. What about north pole face? For north pole face, obviously magnetic lines of flux will leave the north pole face. So you see magnetic lines of flux are leaving the north pole face, and obviously they will enter through the teeth portion, not through the slot portion. Okay, because along the slot air gap is longer. You see, along the slot air gap is longer. So most of the lines of flux, they will prefer to enter or leave through the teeth portion of the armature core. That means through teeth only, not through slot, because if they are moving along the slot portion, they will encounter longer air gap length. But we know that magnetic lines of flux, they always exhibit a tendency to choose a path of minimum reluctance. Hence, magnetic lines of flux will tend to choose a path which is through the teeth of the armature core. Because if you move along the teeth of the armature core, air gap length will be smaller, so reluctance offered to the magnetic flux will be smaller. Now this cross and dot, you can again verify that same thing. Cross means what? This right hand forefinger should enter the board, and dot, it should leave it. So thumb is pointing towards the south pole. So you see lines of flux are entering this south pole face. This north pole face, again right hand forefingers. Cross means what? Here you have cross. So cross means what? It is entering into the board. Dot means leaving. So where is thumb pointing? Away from the north pole face. So lines of flux is leaving this north pole face. So this is a field flux drawn assuming armature current is 0. What about this one? Field current is assumed to be 0, which is purely hypothetical. Field current is assumed to be 0, and armature conductors are shown to carry this current, cross and dot. So again you apply right hand rule. Cross means what? Current is entering into the board. So I am grabbing this conductor with my right hand. The thumb is pointing towards the board because it is cross current. Cross current means it is entering into the board. These four fingers I am curling. So you see the direction of the curl of these four fingers is actually the direction of magnetic lines of flux.
For dot, it is what? It is leaving. So that means my thumb should move away from the board. Again, I am curling these 4 fingers. So you see the arrow is getting matched. The arrow direction is getting matched with the direction in which these 4 fingers are curling. Okay. So we have plotted this armature flux phi A, assuming field current is 0. But in actual practice, both will exist simultaneously. Of course, I am assuming that DC motor is under loaded condition. So if it is loaded, armature current will be there and field current will be there in both the situation, either load or no load. So if you just take a resultant, you see this phi A means what? This armature flux. You see here, this phi A is actually this one. If you can consider, this phi A is actually this one. This phi A is this one, and this phi F is actually this one. This magnetic lines of flux. You see, this was your phi F, isn't it? So this phi F is this one. So what is the resultant flux? Resultant flux is your phi G. Phi G means air gap flux. Phi G means air gap flux. You see here, for south pole, lines of flux are entering na pole face. So what should be the phi F orientation? Upwards, vertically upwards, and phi F for these conductors 6 dash, 5 dash, 4 dash, it is from left to right. So what is phi G? Along this, what is phi G actually? Air gap flux. So you see, these are the lines of flux. So these lines of flux are the combined effect. These lines of flux are actually showing the combined effect due to field current as well as armature current. The same thing can be found out for here. For you see north pole, what was the direction of phi A? Phi A is in this direction, that is from right to left. So this is my phi A. This is my phi A. Let us zoom it here. So this is phi A. You see, for these conductors which are under north pole, conductors under north pole are having armature flux directed from right to left. So phi A is directed from right to left. What about the lines of flux for field? Lines of flux for field are vertically downwards. You can look here. Lines of flux for north pole are vertically downwards because it is leaving the north pole phase and entering the teeth. So phi F, that is field flux, should be downwards. So let me redraw here. So this is your phi A. This is your phi A. And what about the field flux? Field flux is vertically downwards for this north pole. So this is your phi F. So this thing is your phi F. Okay. This thing is your phi F. So now what is the resultant? Resultant will be like this. Resultant will be like this phi G. So you see, this thing is getting matched with this one. Okay. This thing is getting matched with this one. Na? This one. So what do you find? That the flux which is being entering and leaving the rotor core or stator core, they are choosing a slant path. Instead of taking a path which happens to be vertical so that the air gap length is smaller, they are taking a slant path. You can just compare this thing. If the lines of flux would have crossed vertically, if the lines of flux would have crossed it vertically like this, vertically, in that case air gap would have been smaller, but they are taking a slant path. Why this slant path is coming? This slant path can be explained by this phasor. Armature flux phi A for south pole is in this direction. Field flux for south pole is towards the pole face. So this is phi G, that is air gap flux slant. For north pole you can refer to this diagram. This diagram, where is phi A directed? From right to left. You see, for north pole conductors, flux is directed from right to left. What about field flux phi F? Field flux phi F, you can see field flux phi F is vertically downwards because it will leave the north pole face. So this is my phi G. This is my phi G. So it is also, you see, it is also choosing a slant path. So what can we say? That if you move the armature core in this direction, okay, this is the direction of force. If you move the armature core in this direction, in that case what will happen? This slant path which is taken by the lines of flux, they will straighten up or they will cross the air gap vertically. So in that case what will happen? Air gap length will become shorter or smaller. So that's what we are saying, that magnetic lines of flux, they always show a tendency of choosing a path of minimum reluctance. So if that is true, that magnetic lines of flux, they always exhibit a tendency of following a path of minimum reluctance, so in that situation the lines of flux should not take this slant path. Rather, lines of flux should take this vertical path so that the air gap length is shorter. And how that is possible? If you move the armature core from left to right, please look it here. If you move the armature core from left to right, in that case this slant path will become straight and you will find that the air gap reluctance is smaller. This part is what? This part is your armature core. Na? This is your armature core. We have taken the developed view. So this is the armature core, this part is your armature core. So this armature core has to be moved. This armature core has to be moved. This is my armature core. Let me write it. This is your armature core. So the armature core has to be moved from left to right. In that case, what will happen? This slant part will become straight. It will straighten up. These lines of flux no longer need to take. These lines of flux will no longer need to take the slant path. Rather, they will take vertical path if we can move the armature core towards the right. That is from left to right. So that also can be used for explaining the direction of torque developed in the armature core of a DC motor, that the resultant or the combined flux due to the field current and armature current will create a flux which will have a tendency of showing slant path, but magnetic lines of flux, they prefer the minimum reluctance path. So what happens? The armature core will experience a force in such a direction that will allow the lines of flux to choose a minimum path, or it will not allow to choose them slant path. Rather, it will allow them to choose some vertically straight path so that air gap length is smaller. Okay, so let it be up to this. Thank you. That's